sermon series, I would like you to think about it as an analogy of stop, start, continue, those of you who are cooks. Whether you like to cook, you like to eat out, you like somebody else to cook for you, most of us love to eat. I think that's pretty clear. There are some foods we've tried once that we didn't like, and we will stop eating them. That one food for me is kale. I tried as hard as I could to like kale. I just can't. Some of the foods that aren't good for us, like fried cheese curds, leaving Wisconsin and leaving Minnesota, I have hopefully left behind fried cheese curds, except Culver's has fried Wisconsin cheese curds. We should stop eating them. Then there are some foods that we hesitate to try or hesitate to eat, like sushi. And for me, at least, I have ended up loving sushi. So in our own lives, there are some things we need to stop. There are some things we need to continue. And there are some things we simply need to let go of. Today is all about stopping or letting go. So here's a little story from my Deep South previous experience. Patty Jo, my niece, 2.5 years old, came running into the kitchen in the double wide crying for help, and she had that look on her face that said, "I've done something wrong, Mommy and Unky." And she said, "Unky, Mama, look, I'm stuck." Well, her hand was stuck inside this great-great-great-grandmother Alvina's stoneware jug. The jug is the only family heirloom that survived, get this, the Civil War battle called the Siege at Corinth, Mississippi, which is about 25 miles north of my hometown, Boonville, Mississippi. Great-great-great-gramp Silas was his name, and great-grand Alvina had moved up to Corinth during the Civil War, hoping to save the South. Personally, this day, the jug still reeks of Mississippi moonshine. We tried everything to get that jug off of Patty Jo. Warm, soapy water, lard, butter, bacon grease. And I asked the obvious question. I said, so Patty Jo, how in the world did you do this? Patty had dropped candy into the jug to see if she could see it at the very bottom. And when she couldn't see it, of course, she reached her hand into the jar, into the jug, and it got stuck. She couldn't get her hand back out. So my sister calls for reinforcements. My Uncle Fairley, who was the trailer court maintenance man at the time, got out some WD-40, still didn't work. Seemed the only option was to break this heirloom jug. So while Graham, my mother, finally she arrived, and she takes this sad little girl who is now crying profusely in her knee, and she says, "So Patricia Josephine, sweetheart, your mama told me you reached into this jar for candy, is that right?" "Mm-hmm, that's right, Mama." "Honey, tell Mama the truth. Did you still have a hold of the candy?" "Uh-huh." Then Mama rubbed her back, held her close, and gently but firmly said, "Let it go. Let it go, honey, let it go." And sure enough, the jug slipped off as smooth as silk. Of course, it was going to, because it was so incredibly lubed up with everything you can imagine. So today, it's letting go of what doesn't serve you. Letting go of what doesn't serve you to create space for what does. Let go of what doesn't serve you to create space for what does. So let me illustrate. If you're only here on Sunday, you may not know, staff has worked incredibly hard over the last few months to purge our space of clutter. The kitchen, the stage, the storage rooms, our offices, because now we not only have myself in the office, we have 2 other staff. We let go of that stuff that no longer served us. And then we received 120 guests from Central America last week. With donated food, with donated clothing, with backpacks and medical supplies, muy mucho, to provide our guests, and all of our cleared and clean spaces were once again filled. The moral of the story? Sometimes you got to make space for what is next. What do you need to let go of, my beloved community? What do you need to let go of to create space in your life, in your heart, in your spirit, in your soul? What do you need to let go of so that space is created? In Philippians 2:7, we are told Jesus emptied himself. Jesus emptied himself with the purpose of becoming what? A servant, so that he could be used, so he could be filled with goodness and with love and with the presence of God. Jesus showed us the way to let go so that we can be open to being used. Does anybody recognize the song? Let It Go from Frozen. Thank you. So do you strive to move forward? Do you strive to get unstuck? Do you continually feel worry and anxiety? Do you find yourself limited by feelings of fear or inadequacy? Is there a behavior, a belief, a trauma, a present relationship, or something else that you feel is keeping you from your heart's desire and from your calling and your passion? Do you need to let go of anger or bitterness toward yourself or toward someone else or toward an administration? One of the hardest lessons in life is letting go. Whether it's guilt, anger, love, loss, or betrayal, change is never easy. We fight to hold on, and we fight to let go. What I mean to convey is that we cannot live fully alive and engaged by only letting go. Letting go does not mean giving up. Letting go does not mean hiding out. Letting go does not really mean being complacent. It doesn't mean not caring. And it certainly does not mean relying on God to provide everything for us without any effort on our own. Letting go is a way of being in the world. The message that Silas read for us from Hebrews, I think, says it best. It says, let us lay aside everything that hinders us and the sin. And I don't like that word, but we're going to use it today. It's awfully charged for many of us, especially on a day when we're celebrating Rainbow Festival. And the sin that clings about us, and run with patience and perseverance the race that lies before us. Or in the version that Silas read for us, it means we better get on with it, strip down, start running, and never quit. No extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. Keep your eyes on Jesus. I used to be a runner. You can probably tell I am not anymore. In fact, I loathe running, and I found other ways to exercise. And most of the time I was a runner, I was a long-distance sprinter. I would often talk about needing to let go. I would train, I would prepare, but when the day of the race came, I would need to let go of focusing on my pace and just be mindful of my body. I would need to let go of competition. I'd need to let go of winning and just run freely and run joyfully. I no longer run joyfully. Now think about this. There are several of us that are in our midlife crisis, or maybe we're in our late midlife crisis. Some of you have not entered midlife. So just think about these words from Brené Brown. I think it applies to no matter where you're at in life, midlife, afterlife, before life. People may call what happens at midlife a crisis, but it's not. She says it's an unraveling, a time when you feel a desperate pull to live the life you want to live, not the one you're supposed to live. Amen to that. Next slide. The unraveling is a time when you are challenged by the universe to let go of who you think you are supposed to be and to embrace who you are. For how many of you is that relevant wherever you're at on the journey of life? Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. She talks so much about authenticity. She talks so much about letting go. Now, let me clarify. Letting go is hard, and I don't think letting go is necessarily always healthy. Sometimes you need to hold on for dear life. Sometimes you need to hold on until you really kind of get it figured out. Sometimes you can't let go until you know what you are going to hold on to after you let go. But this is the one thing I've experienced, and this resonates with me because of Dr. Carey's message last Sunday. Spirit is there in my letting go and my holding on and every activity in between. Spirit's presence is the one and often only constant. Like Dr. Carey, I have some really buried and repressed memories of sexual abuse from my childhood years. After several years of therapy and an awful lot of spiritual direction, both my therapist and my spiritual director said, maybe the fact that you have no face, you have no name, you really have no identity, maybe that part of your journey is buried and repressed and potentially a gift from God. And your psyche is protecting you. Now, in a strange way, I had to eventually let go of the nameless, faceless person or persons. But that's taken lots of time. And as Dr. Carey shared last week, even in the midst of these most insidious, atrocious, childhood-snatching moments, God was there, even if I didn't know it at the time. I know it now. God was there in my pain, and God was there now in my letting go. So many of you have asked over the last week, and sometimes when I reveal too much about myself in my sermons, you will say, "So how are you, Pastor?" And sadly to say, I often say, "I'm fine," which I'm trying to take out of my vocabulary, because I'm fine means I'm freaked out, I'm insecure, I'm neurotic, and I'm evasive, right? F-I-N-E. So it's okay, I say I'm fine. But most of the time, yes, I think we all live life freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and evasive, don't we? And in the spirit of Dr. Carey's message last week, I just don't want to be fine. I don't want to be just good. I want to be great. In fact, I would like the Spirit to make James great again, as I hope the Spirit would make each of you great again. But in my calling and in my vocation, I continually worry, I'm continually freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and evasive about the things that are happening in our culture and how to lead our community to joy and happiness and peace and well-being. So this past week, I worried as senior minister now, finally with a junior minister, as we were housing the 120 Guatemalan immigrants that were picked up at the border. Was this the right thing to do? Then I asked myself, do we have the capacity? Pastor Susan is new, Ellie is new, I'm sometimes feeling worn out and fatigued. And what was planned to be a one-night stay turned into a week-long stay. And then I recalled these words from Joseph Campbell. We must be willing to let go of the life we've planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. Who would have known my entire week would be thrown away serving Guatemalan families rather than anything else in the church? Families who are seeking to escape violence, who are seeking a job because there are no jobs in Guatemala because of the drought and because of the violence and the cartel, and they are dropped off at our doorstep with just a small plastic bag marked Homeland Security, all of their family possessions. And I was worried about all the different groups that meet in our space And what would happen if we told them, you can't meet here this week? Would they understand? And we don't have any showers yet. And we've got really old plumbing. We all had 1,000,001 excuses to let go and to say no. And then I'm reminded, because now I have multiple staff, that honestly the buck does stop here. The buck stops with me. Isn't that a great image? When we let go, the outcomes are unpredictable. You can't control the outcome. Urban Meyer, who is the coach of Ohio State University football team, I don't know him, but those of you who are sports fans may. I found this tremendous quote. He said, we don't control the events in life and we don't directly control the outcomes, but we always have control over how we choose to respond. How we respond means everything. Daily, I need to let go of knowing. I need to let go of understanding. I need to let go of having the answer. I cannot control outcomes. I need to trust. We need to trust, as beloved community, that we will have a positive impact on our culture and our society, and sometimes that's going to be way different than we have envisioned. I am coming to a conclusion. So Monday morning of this week, I sat down with two individuals at this particular coffee shop in Tempe, Arizona. And you may know this coffee shop, you may not know this coffee shop, Cartel. And two of my favorite clergy types, Eric Lederman from University Presbyterian and Tom Martinez from Desert Palm UCC, we were gathered together to have some coffee and decompress from the week that we had. And Eric and I both stated, the one in the middle is Eric, Martinez is on the far left, I obviously am on the far right, and that's a picture from way back in Minnesota. That's why I have very hefty clothing on. Eric and I both stated, we have a hate and love relationship with the church. Those are coming from two pastors. And then we said capital C and little c. Tom looked at us as if we were alien. And then we both talked about our journeys of letting go, how difficult it was for Eric and I to let go of the expectations of church and our expectations of our ministries in each of the congregations. And then we talked about how we had to let go of a lot of old theology and paradigms that we used to hold. We had to let go of a concept of hell. And we had to embrace the concept of hell being what we create on earth. We had to let go of an understanding of pie-in-the-sky kingdom that we were all going to end up in, and it's really about rebuilding the kingdom of God here. All three of us had to let go, we realized, at different points in our lives of what Dr. Carey called old white men theology throughout the ages, right? That have really bastardized the truth of Jesus. And all three of us realized we had to let go of a lot of evangelical theology that still even today pops in. We shared how life is a balance of holding on to what is good and right and letting go of what doesn't serve us. So we confirmed, sometimes we let go, we free ourselves and open ourselves up to new possibilities and new opportunities. So at the end of our 2-hour coffee clutch, one of us pulled up this new rendition of the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to stop beating myself up for not doing things perfectly, the courage to forgive myself because I'm working on doing better, and the wisdom to know that you already love me just the way I am. And I am especially fond, though, of Reinhold Niebuhr and this particular quote from Reinhold Niebuhr. He says, change is the essence of life. Be willing to surrender what you are for what you could become. probably the sad part of the message this morning is I don't really have a solution for letting go and holding on. I don't. But I have an illustration. My Guatemalan friends taught me a truth this past week. These Guatemalans left everything they had. Friends, family, whatever home they had, to come to America. To come to America not knowing what they would encounter, not knowing the mistreatment at the border, not knowing that they would end up in cells on cold floors with raw meat and no water and sick children. But you know, when they sat down with us after a few days with Spanish interpreters, they would tell us this. Even when we told them we did not know what was going to be happening for them at the end of their bus ride, they would say this: Estamos en las manos de Dios. We are in God's hands. If that is not a message of letting go, like that's the only answer I have. That's the bottom line, is when we let go and we don't let go and we're confused about the options, that the presence of God is still there and we are in God's hands and in God's love and in God's protective, nurturing bosom, and that God is always with us. So today, as we journey next week into what is it you need to take up or take on, is just keep calm this week and let go when appropriate, but hold on when appropriate, but also know, like those Guatemalan brothers and sisters that were here, is that you're in God's hands each and every day. Amen.